All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. Talk about my favorite subject next to groceries, and that'd be education. You know, I moved to Houston in 2003, and after being here for a while, I realized that the world fundamentally splits into two different kinds of people. There are those that have never really spent any time in Houston, and they look upon our city as being humid and mosquito infested. And then there's us, people who live here and have come to appreciate our city for what it is. The fact that our greatest natural resource is the people who live here, and the spirit that we have, our optimism, the belief that we can do just about anything that we set our minds to. Over the 16 years that I've lived here, I've seen our population of our greater Houston area grow by over 2 million and become even more diverse than it was. During my time here, we've celebrated our shares of victory, and we've also overcome challenges. We welcomed in over 200,000 new Houstonians who moved here from New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And we showed resiliency, and we showed how Houstonians work together under the leadership of our mayor when we overcame the challenges from our own hurricane. We revere local icons who represent the soul of what Houston is really like. People like Beyonce, Mattress Mac, J.J. Watt, Jose Altuve, former President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara. Houstonians who really don't have a lot in common other than they love this city and stand for the kinds of things that we stand for. But what we know is in today's new economy, we know that good paying jobs that support the business expansion that we need is going to require students to have more than a high school education, because the blue collar jobs of old that will support a middle income paycheck, they don't exist anymore. New jobs that pay middle income wages or higher are going to require a technical certificate or a 2-year or 4-year degree. So you can think of it like this. Good education can create a virtuous cycle. Better educated students will give us a higher caliber workforce. Now, I lived in San Antonio before I moved to Houston, and I always found it interesting why there were so many call centers that were located in San Antonio. Call centers that paid hourly wages to their employees. And the reason? Because that's what the educational system was able to provide for. Now, a higher caliber workforce will create a stronger business environment. Look, there's a reason that the Silicon Valley is located where it is, and why Boston is a magnet for high tech and life sciences. It's a result of the output of the education system. From cradle to career, education supplies businesses with the workers that they need. And if you can get a strong business environment, that creates job growth, which then can turn and drive new businesses to come to our city, and that will drive our GDP. Now, a good education system often is buoyed by having great teachers. And after our parents, for most of us, the most influential person or persons in our life was a teacher that we had when we were growing up. I know that was the case for me. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, but I wasn't always the best student in the class. In fact, I didn't even try to be the best student in the class for a long time. In fact, the 4th grade, I had Mrs. Dozier, and I brought with me today a copy of my report card from the 4th grade, and I thought it might share it to you. Now, one of the things that's interesting is Mrs. Dozier, she was fastidious, and she typed my report card. Here's what it said. Scott can do a great deal more than he is currently showing. He was very near a D in his written work and desperately needs to work on citizenship and sportsmanship during our team games. His quality of work would definitely improve if he would check over his assignments before hurriedly turning them in. HEB table, I know I do better now. He'll need to improve in order to keep his office of Lieutenant Governor, watch out, Dan Patrick, of room 3. I'll be looking for a great deal of improvement this next quarter. And then just to pile on, the principal, Mr. Watson, wrote in cursive at the bottom, I'm very disappointed in your citizenship grade. Let's hope it comes up next quarter. Mrs. Dozier had an intervention with my parents before the word intervention had been invented. Not only did my mother go to the parent-teacher conference, but so did my dad. He had to leave work, and the only thing I remember is the beating I got when they got home. I did not like Mrs. Dozier. But I came to respect her because she was committed to my success, and she realized that some students need a little bit of a push and someone to set a higher target. And our state has realized this, and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board has put out a goal of having 60% of Texas students achieve some sort of post-secondary credential or degree by 2030. So how is it that we're doing? Well, we're making progress, but we still have a long way to go. Now, if you look at the graph on the left, it says that 42% of all Texans have some sort of post-secondary credential. But half of those, 21%, were educated from outside of the state. Or, said another way, we do a better job of importing talent than we do of educating our own. And that's problematic because it puts a huge onus on transferring skilled workers in from out of state. But more importantly, it points to a general failure to adequately educate our own. And as a result, many Texas children are going to end up educationally shortchanged, and they won't enjoy the opportunity to succeed and prosper like those of us in this room today. And that's not good enough, and we shouldn't accept it. Now, this chart right here says that we've got to start early. We can't wait until high school to start to address this, because today, only 40% of kids in Harris County read at grade level in the third grade. And until the third grade, you're learning to read, and after that, you're reading to learn. And I think it's safe to say that if you aren't reading at grade level in the third grade, you probably aren't going to be in that group that's going on to college. In fact, you're 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. Now, when I went to school, there wasn't a distinction between being college ready and graduating from high school. They were kind of one and the same. But today there is a distinction. And that definition of college readiness means scoring high enough on a college entrance exam that a student can gain entry to, or that you can make your way through college without any sort of remedial coursework. And today in Houston, only 1 in 3 students qualifies as being college ready. Yet, our expectation is that 60% of all kids are going to get some sort of post-secondary educational degree. Now, we all aspire to have our kids go to the best possible schools so that they have a chance to get ahead. But in Harris County, 44% of all schools are rated either C, D, or F by the Texas Education Agency. And for students of color, the quality of schools is even worse. And unfortunately, when it comes to education, inequality exists. Now, this is a little bit of a complicated slide, so let me walk you through it. On the vertical axis, it shows percent college ready. So the higher that bubble is, the more college ready you are. And on the horizontal axis, it shows percent economically disadvantaged. So on the right-hand side, the farther to the right you are. So you aspire to be a blue bubble in the upper left-hand corner and not a red bubble. And what I've done here is to plot all of the school districts in the greater Harris County area. So this begs the question are kids who are economically disadvantaged just simply poor students? Look, here's what I'd tell you. It's hard to be poor. And those who are economically disadvantaged wake up every day with challenges that are different than what you face or what I face. One of the things that we do at HEB before we build a store in a new area is we spend time going into households around the store and visit with people who live there. And some of the most instructive days I spend are when we build a store in a lower income area and we spend days with those customers. Because if we make decisions about what to put into a store based off of me, a 60-year-old white guy who by the grace of God can eat whatever I want tonight for dinner, we make a lot of mistakes. And what I find as I look into pantries that are 1/2, 1/4 filled, refrigerators or freezers that don't have a lot in them, you learn that folks are dealing with the basics of life's necessities, like how to pay the rent, how to get food in your refrigerator, living in multi-generational families with brothers and sisters and their kids. And what it does is it makes it difficult to get basics done like doing homework, getting kids to school on time, things that we take for granted that they're having to deal with. Look, you don't have to be certified to be a parent. And for many kids in these homes, Their lives are challenging and unstable, yet oftentimes we educate them and have the same expectations for them to progress, just like kids in the suburbs. Now, here's why this is meaningful. 60% of all students in the state of Texas come from disadvantaged homes. Or said another way, we can't expect for our entire workforce to come from 40% of the population that isn't disadvantaged, because otherwise we aren't going to like the way that our society looks, and we aren't going to like the way that we can have enough workers. You know, at HEB, I got bricks and mortar on the ground. I'm not going anywhere because my stores are here. But if I'm in technology, or if I'm in energy, or if I'm in finance, I have a choice of where I locate or where I expand. And we want to make Houston be the most attractive opportunity to bring in new business or have our existing business go on and expand. So if you go back to my earlier slide where only 21% of the kids get a post-secondary credential and the resulting need it puts on us of having to import this talent in, you can see the dilemma that we're faced with of building a quality workforce. Now, partnership members, this is my money slide. If you only take away one thing from what I say, it's this. If you look at the 60 by 30 goal, 60% of all students having some sort of post-secondary credential by the year 2030, and then you say 1 in 6 Black and Latino adults hold a bachelor's degree in the greater Houston area, and if you look in our schools today, that 71% of our schools are made up of Black and Latino students, we've got to do a better job of educating everyone. Houston, this is our wake-up call. We don't want to put a ceiling for the potential of our workforce that's determined by the zip code that kids are born into. It's just that simple. If we want to be a great city, if we want to attract new business and expand existing business, then we've got to find a way to educate all kids, because it's the right thing to do, and we won't be able to grow our businesses if we don't. So 5 years ago, we rewrote the HEB training manuals, and when we did, we rewrote them from an 8th grade literacy level to a 5th grade literacy level. And that was the day that I started to take an interest in public education, because I knew that we were headed in the wrong direction. So that's why I say we're at a crossroads today in determining the kind of city that we want to be. And we can sit here and we can hope that everything plays out and say, gee, my kid's doing okay. It's not about your kid, because every kid that lives in Texas is our responsibility and our accountability, and in our greater Houston area. Or we can join together collectively and work together to make a great city even greater. Now, is it possible for an urban area to do good things and have a turnaround? We don't have to look very far, just up the road to I-45 to Dallas Independent School District, where over the course of the last 4 years, they've implemented some unique strategies, and they've taken their number of improvement required schools down significantly. And what they've done hasn't necessarily been rocket science. They've identified their best teachers, and then they incentivize them to go and teach in the most challenging schools. They've extended the school day, they've upgraded facilities, and they provided additional social and emotional support. Now, we're at the start right now of a new legislative session in Austin, and it's time for us to rethink public school finance reform, because the way in which we finance our schools hasn't been addressed since 1993. Now, here's a case in point. Bob made the point about high tech and the number of computer science majors that there are across the United States and Canada. I heard Mike Morath speak last summer, and he told me that there are about 3,000 high schools in the state of Texas. How many accredited computer science teachers do you think there are? Less than 200. That speaks to the need of changing and investing, that education is not an expense, it is an investment in the future of our state. So for starters, we don't really know what it costs to effectively educate a child, but what we do know is that today we're spending less than the average state in the United States of America, and we're spending about at the same rate that we have, but we have things like security and needing to spend more on technology, and the costs have gone up. Now, with Recapture in 1993, and Recapture is the program where we take money from property-rich districts and send it to property-poor districts. Well, this year, for HISD, which is a district that has about 75% of its students that are deemed economically disadvantaged, they're going to send a check of $274 million back to the state. Now, you can see up here, we spend about $9,100 a year in educating a student. That $274 million, it equates to $1,300 per student. $1,300 per student, $9,100 in total. That is a meaningful amount of money that is going back to the state. Now, the good news, the new Speaker of the House, Dennis Bonnen, who's from just down the road in Angleton, he has said that his #1 priority for this session is public school education and finance reform. And that's great news because it is our #1, because it is at the base building block of what we need for our city. So what is it that we want to do? One, we want to equitably raise school funding so that all kids, regardless of their zip code, have a chance to receive first-class education. Two, strong focus on literacy to ensure that every student can read by the 3rd grade. We've got to start early. Three, look to achieve outcomes for the money that is invested so that we can ensure that more money goes to the kids who need it the most. And I would say this is probably the most controversial of any of the 3 planks because we have to make sure that the outcome measures are correct so that we don't have unintended consequences of money not getting to the people that going to the kids who need it the most. And then fourth, we want to increase teacher compensation and pay the best teachers more to support students in the schools with the greatest challenges. Now, we fired our first salvo. Bob Harvey and I, we wrote an op-ed piece in the Chronicle that showed January 6th. And in it, thank you. And in it, we said to the legislators, it is our expectation that you will pass legislation this session. And then we reached out to chambers across the state and asked them to do the same thing on the same day. And 6 op-eds were published on that day so that when legislators showed up on the first day of the legislative session, that following Tuesday, they saw that the business community stood united across the state to say that this is a pressing need. We also have not-for-profits that are working hard to support the school districts. For instance, Good Reason is working to ensure that all kids who qualify for pre-K do in fact go. And they know the importance of having great teachers in the classroom and that can make a big difference for kids. And so they're working with ISDs and universities to raise the stature of the profession and the quality of a teacher in every classroom. Their goal is to have a comprehensive strategy to move schools from C, D, and F to A's and B's. Then there's Leadership ISD. This is an organization that's kind of similar to what Leadership Houston does, but it focuses solely on education that takes interested parties like you and me, who might have an interest in education, go through a 6-month training because we know that a community that understands public education is going to be more committed to it. And then there's Houston GPS, and their focus is making sure that we have good people in office and running for Board of Trustees positions because governance is absolutely critical. Now, a 4-year degree isn't the only route to a high-paying career. With the rich diversity of industries that we have in Houston, there are over 1 million good-paying jobs that you can get with a technical degree. And you can see all the different types of industries that we have, whether it's a welder or working in a hospital, a variety of those, that the only path to getting a good-paying job, you don't have to get a 4-year degree. And that's where Upskill Houston comes in. This is an initiative that was started by the partnership. We work with businesses and community colleges and school districts to make sure that schools are training to the needs of jobs and future jobs, so raise the awareness for students and their parents that all paths to success don't require a 4-year degree. And we're making good progress here also. So, way to get there, you graduate from high school, you could get a technical education and then go to a 4-year university. You could go to a 4-year university. Here's what we know. Growing Houston businesses have needs. And at the heart of the matter is having an education system that provides high school graduates that are ready and capable of taking the next step. So in closing, look, one of the reasons I really like being involved with the partnership is that we have the ability to shape the direction and the future of our city. And you can see from the strategic plan that Bob showed you earlier, we have 3 key points. That's a strong economy, great quality of life, and an opportunity for all. But the leverage point to make this happen is involvement. See, we're more powerful as a team than we are as a few individuals. And there are 1,200 of us here today. And if we find a way for all of us to work together and be involved with the partnership, we would be a real force. Now, many of you are already involved. Stay involved or get more involved. And if you aren't, find a way. Look, I wasn't that knowledgeable about education before I joined the partnership. Today, I think I have the opportunity to make a difference. And as a result, I'm a bigger person, but I've also made a difference in my community. And that's a good thing on two fronts. So think about getting involved. Next year, 2019, where we're in right now, this is going to be a great year. I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with Bob, the different folks on the board of directors, and you. So join me. Let's make Houston a great place. Thank you so much.